Welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Wednesday night. Tonight, we're going to dive into a pretty eye-opening report from the Star Tribune about guns found on school grounds in the state of Minnesota. To join me to talk about it, the journalist behind that report, Mara Klecker with the Star Tribune. Good evening, Mara. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this was a pretty eye-opening piece. Tell us a little bit of your thinking in what you were trying to pursue when you embarked on this story.
Yeah, this came out of kind of a pop-up team discussion after the Annunciation school shooting. It was really all hands on deck when we were covering that. And then when we got a chance to kind of debrief, we had a bunch of us in the room just kind of thinking through smart follow-ups here. And anecdotally, I have seen and heard concern from parents that are saying, hey, we got this email from the school saying a gun was found. And one of the discussions in that pop-up team was like, how often is this happening? And so we went looking for who tracks this and found out that, this is part of the incident reports and dangerous weapon reports that go to the legislature each year. So we could actually track the numbers over time.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's smart reporting. And I would agree with you from a media perspective. For those of you at home, this is kind of what people like Mara and myself get on a daily basis in our email inbox is we get those notifications from individual schools or districts that say a gun was found, a weapon was found, and nobody was hurt. But it seemed like we were getting more. And in your reporting, Mara, you found that that's actually the case, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the real spike came after students returned to school post pandemic. And, we've done a lot of reporting on the dysregulation that all of us felt during the pandemic. But schools really, felt that and saw that. Educators have been saying that ever since students returned to school after distance learning. And I think that really shows up in the spike too. Students during distance learning were exposed to different things, and again had that dysregulation piece and maybe got used to carrying a gun, and that translated then back into when kids were going back to class, some of them had guns on them.
This jumps out. It's in the beginning of Mara and her team's report. Nearly 200 firearms, including about 150 handguns, have been found in Minnesota schools since the 2021-2022 academic year. And that is almost 3 times the number found in the school years spanning 2017 to 2020. Now that gets to, we have the data, or you gathered the data to show there is a significant increase. Were you able to unpack the why?
It's nuanced, right? And just like there are layers of solutions, there are layers of reasons here. School leaders and violence prevention researchers pointed to, again, the many reasons that students came back from the pandemic really elated, fearful, carrying weapons on them. But part of that was that they were worried that they would encounter other people with weapons on their way to and from school. So they felt like they needed to be armed. That is exacerbated by social media, right? A kid sees on Instagram that one of their peers is flashing a gun, and they feel like they don't want to be the only one that's not armed to defend themselves. So lots of reasons there, but that was one that struck me in the reporting as, pretty tragic.
Yeah, I think that you cited the Violence Project, Jillian Peterson, Dr. Peterson, talking about, and I remember speaking to her about something similar in that exactly what you said, seeing something on social media as a perceived threat or a threat. And so the student counters that by carrying a firearm too. And a lot of it has to do with not what's happening at school, but on the way to and from school. So feeling some sort of external threat to themselves, whether perceived or real, on their way to school and on their way home.
Exactly. Yep, that's what we were hearing, and I think that really speaks to the fact that schools are hubs of all things, and that means that whatever is happening outside of school and in the community and in these kids' lives then ends up kind of showing up at school, and I think these numbers really prove that out.
And did you have a chance in your data to geographically map this out? Is this just the city or is this statewide?
It's a little bit hard to tell with these reports. I mean, we just looked at the overall numbers that were showing up in the annual reports that go to the legislature. There are some kind of district by district reporting, but that is overall incident, like behavior incident reports, not broken down by weapons. So, I know some of the feedback to this story was that this is a metro problem, and I think it is a little more widespread than that, but we don't necessarily have the data to show that right now.
Did you have the chance to talk to individual schools or districts about what they're trying to do to be more proactive instead of reactive? Is there anything that they've done that's worked?
Definitely. Yep. We talked to the leaders at Tartan High School, and they are really an example of kind of that combination of hardening solutions and soft solutions. So the hardening is the weapons detection systems, which is a little bit more nuanced than like a traditional metal detector, but students can walk through and it would sense a gun or a knife, which are more aimed at relationship building and prevention orientated responses. And then in St. Paul School District has partnered with the Violence Prevention Project over multiple years here, interviewing kids that have been involved in violence and really trying to understand the root causes and the reasons for that. So again, lots of layered, nuanced approaches here to try to both prevent and understand, and then respond if a weapon is brought onto school grounds.
And it should be noted too, this isn't just a metro problem, a Minnesota problem. Nationwide, we're seeing similar stories with these kids coming back post-COVID into a brand new world.
Most definitely. Yep. I mean, every education reporter I've talked to across the country is seeing that. We've done story after story all over the country about the mental health need that schools are really seeing. And we also know that in the first year of the pandemic, there were more gun purchases. So frankly, there are more weapons in communities across the country as well.
Yeah, that access question seems to be one that comes up because quite obviously it's usually it's even elementary, middle, high school kid cannot, in most cases, purchase a gun by themselves, so they're getting it from home.
Exactly. And that's kind of left this question for school districts to answer. Is it their responsibility then to try to educate families and community members about safe gun storage? Does that cleanly fall in the responsibility of a school district or school leaders? And, some say yes, and others are saying, yeah, we're dealing with that problem, but, this is broader than us in terms of finding the solution as well.
Right, because, you made a really salient point, I think, about, a school as a hub. A student goes to said school every single day, but they're also a member of our wider community. And so this isn't just a problem for school X or school Y or school Z. It affects everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the weight that is really falling on the shoulders of school leaders. Like they feel that. And that's true, not just when we're talking about guns, that's true with so many other kind of societal issues that end up falling, on the backs of school leaders trying to really serve the kids and be that hub for the community. They're a great hub, but they can't have all the solutions alone. The hub needs to be a hub connected to many other resources and many other people dedicated to finding solutions.
And lastly, I admit ignorance to this. I didn't know it existed. So you referred a couple of times to this report to the legislature. So what has to be reported to the legislature? What is that?
These are dangerous incidents. So it's broader than just weapons, but one category is weapons. So every school district, every school that encounters a student with a weapon has to fill out a report, and then those reports are compiled into this annual report that then goes to the legislature. And it's fairly detailed. I mean, again, it's these overarching numbers across the state, but it does have a breakdown of guns and toy guns as well, types of guns, handguns, long guns, air guns, as well as knives. And knives are actually more commonly found on school grounds than guns and firearms. And then there's some other categories as well.
It's just a whole different universe, showing my age in that of what districts, teachers, staff, counselors have to deal with in our schools for our kids. Mara, I thank you for joining us tonight and for your reporting. For any of you watching, I highly encourage you to check out Mara's piece in the Star Tribune about the number of guns found on school grounds in Minnesota. That has been going up in recent years. We appreciate you joining us, Mara. And that's all for Breaking the News on this Wednesday night. Take care.